Well, thanks very, very much. Great ending there, Alan. Really appreciate it, and brings me back to the days of doing that sort of work myself. Very complex. We can see the difference between early phase development and the requirements for commercial or getting ready for commercial applications. And this is with a product that's actually not commercial even yet, right? So these are just preparations for commercial manufacturing. So you can see the extent of the development that has to occur and innovation to be able to support the industry. So it's really quite eye-opening. It's very exciting, but also quite, it's almost scary in a way to understand, like, how are we actually going to be able to manufacture these and support these patients that are in such need, and that cures, if you want to call them that, are actually available. So getting them out there is going to be quite an objective. So one thing that I noted from some of the talks here was that we're starting to see a lot of challenges and problems that we're talking about, scheduling challenges and cryopreservation and logistical issues. But to me, this is a great sign, right? This means that the industry is really progressing and we're moving towards
great problems to have.
They're great problems to have, exactly. One of the questions that I had was really, and I'll throw it out there, anybody can pick it up, is early stage development, like where Gene was talking about earlier this morning. How does that progress into a contract manufacturing type of a situation? Maybe Alan, you're probably the best to address that. And what kind of additional work? You touched on it a bit, but maybe a couple of comments there. And I know we're limited in time, so it would be good to maybe take a couple of questions too. But Alan, if you might take that.
Sure. Well, I think Gene made some wonderful points that having that information is incredibly valuable. We've worked with, we actually put in place a collaboration agreement with Jim Wilson and University of Pennsylvania around AAV manufacturing. And the notion behind that was that that group has done extensive work and developed extensive analytics to be able to support ultimately manufacturing in a contract manufacturer's hands. And we wanted to have the ability to parlay that, as a lot of targets are using AAV vectors. So I think the concept of collaborating with these academic centers of excellence is one that makes sense. Another precedent, if you will, has been in the monoclonal space. We talked about it being a mature area today. Wasn't always that way. There were consortiums of industry that worked with, for instance, MIT to understand the Chinese hamster ovary cell, which is kind of the workhorse of recombinant protein production. There may be an opportunity for that. And there are some initiatives in the field that are, I think, flirting with this. One is with the FDA and the NIST group, National Institutes of Standards and Technology. They're looking to share information, establish standards, and make that information available to industry. I think there has to be recognition that the contract manufacturer, the manufacturer, is not always going to have the expertise and resources to do that fine work that's being done in the academic centers. So we just have to figure out a way to get that information in the hands of the folks that are going to be using it to manufacture.
I think the collaboration is the right answer, because we've worked with a lot of different clients, and understanding what their needs are depending on where they're at in their development cycle, and engaging the regulators too. I think that's one of the biggest challenges is, there is no approved product in the US. There's only 2 in the Western world. The regulatory pathway isn't clear, and certainly with Glybera, it wasn't clear even when it was done. So that kind of uncertainty is expensive and it's time consuming. And the sooner we resolve that, I think the more we're going to be able to move these things forward, like from our perspective, to understand, what quality level for these different components is required, because it all drives the cost of goods and the timeline.
Absolutely. Standardization, right? Understanding where things need to go. Sean, what, oh, sorry, go ahead,
No, I
Alan.
was just going to say, and working with the tool providers, it is very helpful to have products which are designed appropriately, that are designed for use in closed processing, the ability to order custom components that can close up a process. And we've seen a lot more, I guess, centralization, if you will, on certain platforms because those tool providers have recognized the importance of that. I think that tool companies have been doing a good job in recognizing the need.
And just to build off that, I mean, I think that the formal collaborations between a lot of the key opinion leaders, at least from a tools provider perspective, is crucial and critical. I mean, without understanding, the forefront of their research, it's very difficult, as I alluded to in my presentation, that, to define those requirements. And you really have to work, within the trenches with these guys and building with products. And I find that we're in a similar place to where biologics was back, in the 80s, is that, one of the big workhorses in the industry was protein A chromatography in Sephiros. And that took a while to develop and perfect, and without being, within the trenches to the guys who are manufacturing those biologics. I don't think, those chromatography resins would be here today.
So necessity drives innovation, essentially, right? So when you see these problems coming up, this is where the opportunity to develop new technology lies, exactly. Sean, what do you think about new technologies that are being developed and the ability to support some of these potential large requirements in the future? How does that allow you to sleep at night?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm sleeping just fine because there's a lot of innovators, thankfully, within the world. I mean, companies like myself, and given that we're fairly small, a lot of us are very nimble and understand really what the crucial pain points on within the market. And so, really, innovating technologies and developing innovative technologies, as I mentioned before, is just a function of working with collaborators. But like going back to when we were talking about electroporation, there's a lot of people trying to address that in different methods. When in some instances where technologies of simply squeezing a cell and increasing the porosity of the cell could then transduce those. So I think there's always more technology to come to the market. It's just building and understanding and building essentially the platform and the workflow to support those technologies is crucial, and you do that with KOLs and key opinion leaders.
Absolutely, staying connected and making sure we all understand what the needs are will help us all drive this industry forward. Well, I think if there's some time for a few questions, that would be good then.
Any questions in the audience? There's one right back here.
Hi, thanks. I guess this is a little bit more for Wuxi. Are you seeing much maturity in the interface in the IND process going into from phase 2 to phase 3, the FDA's interaction with that in manufacturing, and then transitioning on to the proposal for the BLA? Who actually holds the BLA? At the end of the day, because I think your model is a manufacturing model, right?
Right.
And that seems to be probably not very mature yet. We've experienced that a lot in antibodies, but I'm not so sure in cell therapy that that's a well-developed process map.
Yeah, there is the expectation that the model that's been used for monoclonal antibodies, for instance, would apply to the cell therapies. Where it gets a little mucky is the extension of the client to the sites where the materials are being collected, and then the delivery back, and where does that authority and responsibility lie. Generally, the manufacturing agreement and the quality agreement as defined by FDA, it covers that, and it works with the existing BLA mechanism. FDA issued guidance a little while back about manufacturing partnerships and clarified that there is a shared responsibility for GMP manufacture. So FDA is anticipating that the pathway that exists will apply to these products. Hope that answered the question.
Great. Are there any other questions? Or is everybody just hungry? I think everybody's hungry. So thank you all very much. We'll break for lunch.